Nicholas Cosmo, a young man who has mastered the act of persuasion and manipulation, a man of great charisma who create one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in history. He successfully defrauding $400 million from 4,000 people without ever getting caught or arrested, but instead did something that shocked the world. Have you ever wondered how some people can get away with lying and cheating for so long, while others get caught right away? How do they manage to fool so many people and make millions of dollars in the process? What makes them do it in the first place? Well, today we'll explore the life of Nicholas Cosmos and the psychology behind his actions and how he used his manipulative skills to deceive thousands of investors. Nicholas Cosmo was born in Long Island, New York in 1971. He had a passion for baseball and dreamed of becoming a professional player. He even played in a minor league team for a while, but he didn't make it to the big leagues. So he decided to switch careers and become a stockbroker instead. He quickly got his license to trade in 1993. He seemed to have a talent for sales and persuasion, and he quickly rose up the ranks in his firm. However, he also had a problem. He was addicted to gambling. He would spend hours and hours in casinos and online platforms, betting on various games and sports. He would often lose more than he could afford, and he would get into debt and trouble. He tried to cover his losses by taking money from his clients' accounts without their permission or knowledge. This was a serious crime, and he was eventually caught and arrested in 1998. He pleaded guilty to felony fraud and was sentenced to 21 months in prison. He also had to pay back $177,000 to his victims and declare bankruptcy. You might think that this experience would have taught him a lesson and that he would have changed his ways. But you would be wrong. Cosmo was not a person who learned from his mistakes. He's the type who repeat and made them worse. He was a person who suffered from a psychological disorder called antisocial personality disorder, or ASPD. ASPD is a mental condition that affects how a person thinks, feels, and behaves. People with ASPD have a disregard for the rights and feelings of others, and they often break the law and violate social norms. They are manipulative, deceitful, impulsive, irresponsible, and aggressive. They lack empathy, remorse, and guilt. They are often charming and charismatic, and they use these traits to exploit and manipulate others for their own benefit. They are also very good at rationalizing and justifying their actions, and they blame others for their problems. They have a distorted sense of self, and they think they are superior and entitled to special treatment. They also have a low tolerance for frustration, and they get bored easily. They seek excitement and stimulation, and they are willing to take risks and gamble with their lives. They are often addicted to drugs, alcohol, or gambling, and they have trouble maintaining relationships and holding jobs. They are, in short, the worst kind of people. Cosmo was one of them. He had all the signs and symptoms of ASPD, and he showed no signs of improvement or remorse. He was released from prison in 2000, and he immediately started looking for a way to make money again. He used his parents' money and a government grant to set up a new company called Agape World. He claimed that his company was a legitimate investment firm that made money by lending money to real estate developers who needed short-term loans. He promised his investors high returns, ranging from 12% to 80% per year. He hired a team of brokers, some of whom were also ex-convicts, to recruit new investors. He advertised his company on the radio, and he used word of mouth to spread the word. He targeted people who were looking for a safe and easy way to make money, especially in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks and the dot-com crash. He appealed to their emotions, and he used his charm and charisma to gain their trust. He seemed to be a successful and honest businessman who had overcome his past and had learned his lesson. He seemed to be a good guy who wanted to help people achieve their financial goals. But Cosmo was lying to everyone. His company was not a legitimate investment firm, but a Ponzi scheme. A Ponzi scheme is a type of fraud that involves paying old investors with the money from new investors, instead of generating profits from actual investments. The scheme relies on a constant inflow of new money to keep it going, and it collapses when the money runs out or when the investors demand their money back. The scheme is named after Charles Ponzi. an Italian immigrant who ran a similar scam in the 1920s involving international postal coupons. Ponzi schemes are illegal, and they are very common in the financial world. They are also very hard to detect because they often use fake documents to show that the investments are doing well. They also use psychological tactics to keep the investors happy and loyal, such as paying them regular dividends, creating a sense of exclusivity and community, and discouraging them from withdrawing their money. They also use fear and greed to manipulate the investors, and they prey on their ignorance and trust. Cosmo was a master of these tactics. He created a sophisticated and elaborate Ponzi scheme that lasted for 8 years, from 2000 to 2008. He managed to raise more than $400 million from more than 4,000 investors, mostly from Long Island. He used some of the money to pay the old investors and some of the money to pay his brokers, who earned huge commissions for bringing in new investors. He also used some of the money to fund his lavish lifestyle and to buy expensive cars, jewelry, hotels, and limousines. He also used some of the money to gamble on the futures market, hoping to make even more money. But he was not very good at it. He lost more than $80 million on bad trades and hid his losses from his investors. He lied to them about the nature and the risk of his investments. He told them that he was lending money to real estate developers who were paying him high interest rates. He showed them fake contracts and documents, and he gave them fake updates and reports. He made them believe that their money was safe and secure, and that they were making a fortune. He made them feel special and smart, and he made them feel like they were part of a family. He made them feel good, and he made them feel greedy. He also made them feel afraid. He told them that if they withdrew their money, they would lose their high returns and they would miss out on future opportunities. He told them that if they talked to anyone about their investments, they would get in trouble with the IRS, or they would attract unwanted attention from competitors. He told them that if they trusted anyone else with their money, they would get scammed or robbed, and he was the only one who could protect them and their money. He told them that he was the only one who knew what he was doing, and he was the only one they could trust. He told them a lot of lies, and they believed him. But, as they say, all good things must come to an end, and so did Cosmo's Ponzi scheme. The scheme started to unravel in 2008 when the global financial crisis hit and many investors started to demand their money back, and they started to ask more questions. Cosmo tried to stall them, and he tried to reassure them. He told them that everything was fine and that their money was still growing. He told them that they just had to wait a little longer and that they would get their money soon. He told them that he was working hard to find new deals and new sources of income. He told them that he was doing everything he could to help them. He tried to stall and delay them, but he couldn't fool them anymore. He tried to find new investors, but he couldn't attract them anymore. He tried to hide and escape, but he couldn't evade them anymore. He told them more lies, but they didn't believe him anymore. They started to get suspicious and angry. They started to demand their money back, and they started to threaten him. They started to hire lawyers and private investigators, and they report him to the authorities who have also been investigating him for a while now. They realized that they had been duped and betrayed by a sociopath. So how did he manage to fool so many people for so long? Well, he used a variety of techniques and tricks to manipulate and deceive his targets, and he exploited their emotions, hopes, and fears. He used the following psychological principles and strategies. Social proof. Social proof is a psychological phenomenon where people are more likely to do something if they see that others are doing it. A classic example of social proof is the broken window experiment. In this experiment, researchers put a broken window in a neighborhood and observed how long it took for people to break the other windows in the neighborhood. They found that once one window was broken, people were much more likely to break the other windows because they saw that others had already done it. This is an example of how social proof can influence people's behavior. It's interesting to see how it can be used for both good and bad purposes. For example, social proof can be used to encourage people to do good things, like donate to charity or volunteer their time. On the other hand, it can also be used to manipulate people into doing things they wouldn't normally do, like buy products they don't need or make bad decisions. It's definitely a double-edged sword. Cosmo used the testimonials and referrals of his existing investors to convince new investors that his company was trustworthy and successful. He also used the popularity and reputation of his company to create a sense of urgency and scarcity, making people feel that they had to join quickly or they miss out on the opportunity. Authority. In the famous Milgram experiment, conducted by Stanley Milgram in the 1960s. In this experiment, participants were asked to administer electric shocks to other people. They were told that the shocks were part of a scientific experiment and that the experimenter, who was dressed in a white lab coat, was a scientist. Even though the participants could hear the victims screaming in pain, they continued to administer the shocks because they saw the experimenter as an authority figure and believed that what they were doing was for a good cause. People tend to defer to authority figures, even when it goes against their own judgment. The participants knew that they were hurting people, but they continued to do it because they trusted the experimenter. Even when something doesn't feel right, people are more likely to follow the crowd or listen to authority figures. Cosmo used his credentials and experience as a former stockbroker and a businessman to establish himself as an authority and an expert in his field. He used his company's name and logo, which sound and looked professional and credible, to create a sense of legitimacy and quality. He also used his company's registration and regulation, which were fake and forged, to create a sense of security and compliance. Reciprocity. Reciprocity is the idea that people feel obligated to return a favor if they've been given one. For example, if someone gives you a gift, you're more likely to want to give them a gift in return. This can lead to a cycle of reciprocity, where people keep giving gifts or favors to each other. Reciprocity encourages people to keep doing things that are expected of them, even if they wouldn't normally do those things. It's a way of maintaining balance in social relationships, and it's especially powerful in situations where you're not sure what the right thing to do is. Cosmo used his generous and frequent payouts to his investors to create a sense of gratitude and loyalty. He used his high commissions and bonuses to his brokers to create a sense of motivation and satisfaction. He used his lavish gifts and parties to his employees and customers to create a sense of appreciation and friendship. Liking. It's the idea that we're more likely to do things for people we like. We all want to be liked by others, and we often feel obligated to do things for people we like. For example, if your friend asks you to go to a movie with them, you're more likely to say yes if you like them. Liking can also make us more likely to follow the lead of people we like. This is called liking bias. We tend to trust people we like more, and we're more likely to believe what they say. Liking is a very interesting concept because it can be influenced by so many different factors. We're more likely to like people who pay us compliments or who give us gifts. It's important to be aware of these factors when we're trying to build relationships with others. We can use this knowledge to foster positive relationships and to build trust. Cosmo used his charm and charisma to create a rapport and a connection with his investors. He used his humor and emotions to create a mood and an atmosphere of fun and excitement. He also used his stories and anecdotes to create a context and a background of success and adversity. Commitment and consistency. The idea of commitment and consistency is that we're more likely to do something if we've already made a commitment to do it. For example, if you've already agreed to volunteer at a local charity, you're more likely to follow through on that commitment because of your desire to be consistent. This can have powerful effects on our behavior and decisions. It can also be used as a persuasive technique. A simple example of this effect is the foot in the door technique. This is a persuasion tactic where you first ask someone to do a small favor and then you follow up with a larger request. For example, you might ask someone to sign a petition for a cause you care about. Once they've done that small favor, they're more likely to say yes to a larger request, like making a donation. This happens because people have a desire to be consistent with their previous actions and commitments. It's a very powerful technique, and it can be used for good or bad purposes. Cosmo used his contracts and agreements to create a sense of commitment and obligation. He used his reminders and follow-ups to create a sense of consistency and reliability. He used his guarantees and assurances to create a sense of security and trust. Before we continue with the video, I will appreciate if you hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It helps us creating better educative and entertaining videos for you. Thanks. So, you might be wondering what happened to Cosmo. What did he do? Did he confess, apologize, or cooperate? Did he run away, hide, or fake his death? Did he try to fix, improve, or end his scheme? No, he did none of these things. He did something even more surprising and shocking. He turned himself in. Yes, you heard me right. He walked into the FBI office in Long Island on January 26, 2009, and he told them that he was running a Ponzi scheme, and he wanted to surrender. He said that he was sorry and that he wanted to cooperate. He gave them his records, his accounts, and his assets, and he admitted that he had defrauded about 4,000 investors out of about 400 million. He also said that he had lost about $80 million in gambling, and he had spent about $20 million on his personal expenses. He said that he had no money left, and he couldn't pay anyone back. He said that he was sorry for his actions and want to make amends and end his misery. He said that he was a changed man, and he had learned his lesson and was ready to face the consequences of his actions. But he was still lying. Cosmo was not sorry for what he had done. He was sorry for getting caught. He was not a changed man. He was still a sociopath. He had not learned his lesson. He was still trying to manipulate and deceive everyone, even the authorities. He was still trying to save himself, and he was still trying to make money. He was still trying to run his scheme, even from behind bars. He was still trying to scam people, even his fellow inmates. He was still trying to gamble, even with his life. He was still trying to do a lot of things, but he failed. Cosmo was charged with mail fraud and wire fraud, and was sentenced to 25 years in prison in October 2011. He was ordered to pay back $179 million to his victims, which was only a fraction of what he had stolen, and asked to forfeit his assets. He was also banned from ever working in the financial industry again. He had to face the anger and disappointment of his investors who had lost their life savings, their retirement funds, their homes, and their dreams. He had to face the shame and disgrace of his family who had trusted and supported him and who had been dragged into his mess. He also had to face the reality and consequences of his actions, which had caused immense harm and damage to himself and others. He was sent to a federal prison in Fort Dix, New Jersey, where he was supposed to serve his time, but he didn't. He died in prison in February 2018 at the age of 46. He allegedly died of a heart attack caused by a blood clot in his lung. He died alone, and he died broke. He died as a fraud. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something. Please subscribe and stay tuned, because I have more educative and entertaining videos coming your way. Peace out.